were there any like real transition programs for soldiers back then? Like when someone was transitioning out, what did they do?
Hey, that's a great segue because you're just teeing it up for me. I appreciate that. So when you talk to folks, the first challenge we have when we start trying to tell people what we're doing today in TAP is recognizing what their experiences are, their anecdotal concerns, but what bucket they fall into, because there's 4 distinct buckets. And so you have pre-1991. If you think back, that's a date you should remember, that's Desert Storm. So before 1991, there really wasn't a transition program. And I can vouch for that because something I left out was after my first 3-year enlistment, I actually thought about getting out. And I went through the entire transition process and then re-enlisted on the last day, because you could do that back and re-enlist on the last day. But when I say I went through the entire transition process, that consisted of going over to the transition point and getting a 214. That was it. No preparation, no counseling, no job assistance, no education assistance. You go over there, you fill out your 214, you sign it, and they wish you luck and tell you Godspeed. So that's pre-1991. What occurred with Desert Storm was as we got ready to draw down from the big buildup we did for Desert Storm and all the stop loss and things that you watch the movies about, we recognized that we're going to have a lot of people living very fast, and Congress recognized that. And so a law came into being, and Congress helped us shape that, and we built the first TAP, and that was part of the career program, and it was really good, actually. And it was built because we had so many people getting out so fast. We recognized we had to do some type of facilitation for that. Long time overdue, but at least it came in at that point. The problem was, after it got put in place in 1991 and was rolling by 1992, it was really good. But then over the next 20 years, it atrophied. Okay? And that atrophy carried until you still had pockets of excellence where there might be an installation that had really hung on to it and kept improving, but there was no overarching guidance, strategy, those type of things that would have kept us evolving. And so that leads us to the second grouping, right? And that second grouping then after 1991 came into 2008. And in 2008, you had the VAL Act come into play. And with the VAL Act, you took and all of a sudden now, I'm sorry, this is the third category. The first category is pre-1991. Second category, second bucket is 91 to 2008. You had the VAL Act at the end of 2008, really 2009. And we put together the VAL Act, for those that aren't familiar with it, was in-depth congressional response, because if you think back to that time historically, that's when the crash happened. That's when unemployment rates skyrocketed. There were places where unemployment rates were 11, 15, 19% for different cohorts. And so the concern was we had to do something from a strategic level. And I'll come back and talk about that strategic concept in a moment. We had to do something to improve how we were assisting people getting out. And so the VAL gave us some specific guidance, and it did something. It made the TAP courses mandatory. And so that then created a task force, which ended up being a formalized body that is an interagency structure where labor, VA, the Small Business Administration, the Department of Education, all the services, DoD, the Office of Personnel Management, all came together to take and build a transition program where we leverage the skills and capabilities of each of those agents. Think about that for a second. Prior to that, you might have been getting guidance on any type of transition on the employment side from somebody in DoD. That's not really our expertise, is it? It is labor's. And so when you talk about what should labor do, what should VA bring to the table, what should the Small Business Administration do, that all helped us to shape a TAP that started preparing people to go through. But perhaps one of the key things we did was ensure we established oversight at a strategic office. And that's where I sit now, okay? And so we put this office in place, which had not existed before, at the DoD level to coordinate, collaborate, synchronize, and ensure evaluation and assessment. That's probably the key, that we put a robust system together of evaluation and assessment so that we continue looked at what we were doing, because we did well. If you looked at it, what we did in 2012, it was far better than what was happening in 2008. But we have room for improvement. So we continue to evaluate, assess, and a part of that is that feedback from our stakeholders out there, the Beyond TAP team. But so we take all of that, we put it together, and you had a TAP program. But we also put in a formalized review of everything. So every year, there's a complete review of the curriculum. On the one set of years, what you have is a technical review. And on the second set of years, you have a deep dive where we take everything apart and look at all the feedback and rebuild it. So what that really means is TAP was different in 2012 than it was in 14. It was different again in 16. It was different again in 18. And then that drives us to the big change, what we call complete design rebuild again in 2019. And that's your fourth period.